An automotive summit, a new launch report, and a major safety recall. This is the Automotive Update, presented by AutoVista24. I'm Tom Geggus, editor of AutoVista24, here with the latest edition of the Automotive Update. I'm going to take you through the last 7 days of headlines from AutoVista24 and the wider industry. First up, the UK's automotive body, the SMMT, held its International Automotive Summit this week. Attended by stakeholders from across the sector, it featured insights on industrial strategies and market developments. AutoVista24's special content editor, Phil Curry, was in attendance and joins us now. Hi, Phil.
Hi, Tom. Great to be here as always.
Great to have you with us. Now, before we take a deep dive into the topics covered at the event, Phil, why don't you give us a quick overview into what the summit is all about?
Absolutely. So the SMMT International Automotive Summit is an annual event taking place in London each year in June. It invites attendees from across the global automotive landscape to discuss the UK industry and its place in the wider automotive market. This year it took place on the 25th of June at the IET in London, and it was a really interesting event, plenty of discussion there.
Okay, so what was the main topic of discussion at the event? Was it regulation or economics, technology? Just let me know if I'm getting closer.
It's all three, you're very close indeed. The leading point that was talked about was the new industrial strategy launched by the UK government just days before the summit. And SMMT Chief Executive Mike Hawes said it was absolutely fantastic timing because it gave them plenty to talk about. Now, this is a strategy that looks at manufacturing and making the UK a strong industrial power. And there's plenty of references throughout the document to the automotive market. The plans aim to return the country to being a top 15 global automotive manufacturing location. And it also recognises how the sector can deliver £50 billion or 58.6 billion euros to the UK economy, so it's not a small amount. The strategy sets out how the UK can achieve these aims over a 10-year period. And one of the interesting factors is it also looks to reduce electricity costs, where the UK has one of the highest costs amongst competing automotive manufacturing markets. Now, it states that from 2027, these will be reduced by up to £40 an hour for over 7,000 businesses, many of which are in the automotive manufacturing sector. There's also discussion around investment in other areas to really sort of boost the automotive manufacturing landscape in the country.
And what did the industry voices in attendance have to say about this?
Now, Mike Hawes highlighted the boost that the strategy could give the automotive industry in the UK. He told the audience that this is absolutely critical for us. We have fought for an industrial strategy for some time, and this rightly recognises the automotive industry. It lists it as an advanced manufacturing sector and a growth sector, and also gives our importance to economic growth, high-value jobs, and wealth. Now, Jonathan Reynolds, the Secretary of State for Business and Trade, who was instrumental in developing the industrial strategy, was also present at the summit and spoke to the audience, highlighting that it is now a sign of how the UK government is changing the rules of the game. He used a couple of footballing analogies there. He said, "We need to approach where the UK rises up to meet the demands of the decade ahead instead of trying to play catch-up." However, Andrew Griffith, Shadow Secretary of State for Business and Trade, was a little more sceptical. "We welcome the realisation of high energy costs," he said, "but unfortunately there is a long way to go. The vast majority of businesses in this country, including almost all small and medium-sized enterprises, will not benefit from the changes. And even after they finally appear, British manufacturers of all kinds will still face the highest industrial energy costs in the Organisation for Economic Cooperation and Development, the OECD. That is no basis on which our country can compete for the long term," he concluded.
So that's industrial strategy, Phil, but were there any other major talking points at the event?
There were indeed. A lot of discussion also focused around trade. Now, there has been much said about the imposition of US tariffs, and it was highlighted that the UK deal with the US, where these tariffs will be reduced to 10%, will make the country more attractive for investors compared to those without such a deal.
Now, of course, the US is not the only market the UK trades with. So what was said about other regions and how attractive the UK might be to them?
There was plenty of discussion around China and also the fact that the UK should embrace the opportunities that this could present. Now, several Chinese car makers have entered the UK automotive space in recent years, particularly SAIC, BYD, Chery, XPeng, so on. And the country is more attractive than the EU, where tariffs are placed on battery electric vehicles that are made in China. Victor Zhang, UK Country Director for Omoda and JQ UK, which is the brand imported to the UK by Chery, told the audience that if you look at automotive history, Chinese brands have been coming in the last 2 or 3 years, and more are coming. Localization is something that we should do. So this is why I always say it is an open topic. He also added that when it comes to manufacturing in the UK, they and several other Chinese companies are considering this opportunity. So there are plenty of goings on, and there could be some good relationships between UK and China in the years ahead.
Well, that is interesting to hear, Phil. But please don't go anywhere, as I'd like you to stick around for our next segment. This week, AutoVista 24 published a new launch report on the Dacia Bigster. The report offers what we call SWOT analysis, covering the model's strengths, weaknesses, opportunities and threats. Now, importantly, it also benchmarks the model's forecast residual values at 36 months and 60,000 kilometres compared with its competitors. So Phil, before we dig into the data, which markets did the launch report cover this time around?
So in this edition of the launch report, we had submissions from AutoVista Group experts in Austria, France and Italy.
Brilliant. And what did they have to say about the Dacia Bigster? What were its strengths?
Well, the general consensus was that it's got a great design and it's comfortable when driving. Another highlight is that it has plenty of physical buttons inside to control certain vehicle systems. That's something that is increasingly lacking in cars where they move onto the infotainment touchscreen. It's also very affordable, as our experts noted.
Okay, and does the model have any particular weaknesses they noted?
Yes, the Dacia Bigster does lack some premium features, and interior materials can feel quite basic as well, which tend to dull the overall ownership experience. It also doesn't have any additional equipment over mandated safety systems, so again, a very basic level of options there.
And what about its opportunities and threats?
Well, the attractive pricing will be a benefit to the Dacia Bigster in what is an increasingly competitive C SUV segment. It is robust as well, while a full hybrid powertrain option is a bonus. Our experts did cite the lack of a diesel as a threat, as well as the fact that there is no full electric version, which may put some buyers off, either from its towing capacity or because they want something that's a bit cleaner and greener.
I think that's a really nice overview of the SWOT analysis, Phil. Maybe you could give us an outline of the Dacia Bigster's residual value performance.
It performs very well. Average list prices in the free markets are around €29,000, and after 36 months and 60,000 kilometres, the model is forecast to retain between 59% and 66%, depending on the market. It performs much, much better than its closest competitors.
Thank you very much, Phil. Now, if you'd like to read the Dacia Bigster's launch report or catch up on the International Automotive Summit, then just head over to autovista24.com. This week we also published articles on new car registrations in the EU, as well as US market forecasts, with a look ahead to our webinar in July. There will be links in the show notes. Also, make sure you're signed up for our email. That way you'll get the latest news directly to your inbox. And subscribe to the Autovista 24 podcast wherever you listen to us. Check out Autovista 24's YouTube channel too. There you'll find our What Is It Explained videos, launch report series, and webinar recordings. There were some major safety recalls in the past 7 days. 2.5 million cars have been recalled in France due to faulty airbags. Made by the now defunct supplier Takata, the components can explode on impact, with potentially fatal consequences. The country's transport minister issued a do not drive order across all brands using the airbags, covering the Corsica and France's overseas territories, as well as on pre-2011 cars on the mainland. Hotter climates do seem to make the unit more unstable. Of the 18 deaths attributed to the airbags in France, 16 have been in overseas territories, the BBC reported. Currently, the government is not ruling out taking further measures in the coming weeks. Meanwhile, in the US, GM issued a recall order for 62,468 vehicles due to a brake-related fire risk, Reuters reported. The brake pressure sensor assembly may allow fluid to leak, increasing the chance of an electrical short. The recall covers certain 2019 to 2024 Chevrolet Silverado models, with roughly 1% expected to have the defect. Also in the US, Volvo is recalling 14,014 electric vehicles due to a software issue with the brakes, Electrive wrote. Affected models may not be able to brake under specific driving conditions, especially when using regenerative braking. A software update is available over the air or at a dealership. If you would like to explore today's stories in more depth, just head to the show notes and click the link to our companion article on AutoVista 24. A big thank you to AutoVista 24's special content editor Phil Curry for appearing and co-producing this episode. Additional thanks go to AutoVista 24 journalist Tom Hooker and web editor James Roberts. The music was Better Find a Solution Fast by Richard Ames. Thank you very much for listening to the AutoVista 24 podcast.